I'm Kelly and John, and I met right after I finished college. He swept me off my feet with his charm and ambition. Before I knew it, we were married and living in the apartment he bought before our wedding. It wasn't anything fancy, but it was ours, and I loved every bit of it. Our daughter Sarah came along soon after. She was perfect. John's blue eyes and my curly hair. I thought we had it all: a loving family, a cozy home, and promising careers ahead of us. I landed a job as a secretary at a small but growing company. The pay wasn't great, but I enjoyed the work and got along well with my coworkers. John, on the other hand, was making his way up at his construction firm. He'd come home with stories of big projects and even bigger deals. I was proud of him, even if his long hours meant I was often alone with Sarah. But something changed in John over time. He'd come home late, eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Who called?" he'd demand. "Why were you all dressed up?" At first I laughed it off, but soon his jealousy became suffocating. One night, after he'd grilled me about a work event, I confronted him. "You think I'm cheating? With who, John? The mailman?" He didn't crack a smile. "Don't play dumb, Kelly. I see how men look at you, and that boss of yours is happily married." "With 3 kids," I cut him off. "For God's sake, John, I'm your wife. I love you." But my words fell on deaf ears. The arguments became more frequent, each one chipping away at our marriage. I was faithful, always had been, always would be. But John's distrust was like a poison seeping into every part of our lives. Through it all, Sarah remained blissfully unaware. At 10 years old, her world revolved around school, friends, and her iPad. I tried to shield her from our fights, but kids always know more than we think. The irony wasn't lost on me. John was the one always coming home late, always going on business trips. If anyone had reason to be suspicious, it was me. But I trusted him. I believed in our vows, in our love. Why couldn't he do the same? One night, after a particularly nasty fight, I found myself staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. John's soft snores filled the room, but I felt miles away from him. How had we gotten here? When had love turned to suspicion, trust to accusation? I thought about leaving, about taking Sarah and starting over. But where would we go? What kind of life could I give her on a secretary's salary? And despite everything, I still loved John. I loved the man he used to be, the man I hoped he could be again. Just when I thought things couldn't get more complicated, life threw me another curveball. My mom, the rock I'd always leaned on, had a stroke. It hit out of nowhere, leaving us all reeling. Mom had always been the picture of health. After Dad died, she'd thrown herself into gardening and book clubs, determined to live life to the fullest. She lived in this gorgeous house in the fancy part of town, courtesy of Dad's life insurance and smart investments. I used to joke that she was living the life of a retired movie star. But that Tuesday morning changed everything. I got the call at work. Mom couldn't speak, couldn't move her left side. I rushed to the hospital, my heart in my throat. The next few weeks were a blur of hospitals, doctors, and terrifying medical jargon. I went to every top-notch clinic in the area, desperate for someone to tell me Mom would be okay. But the prognosis wasn't good. The stroke had left her bedridden, needing round-the-clock care. I was overwhelmed. How could I take care of Mom, manage my job, look after Sarah, and deal with John's jealousy all at once? It felt like drowning in slow motion. Then, out of the blue, John came up with an idea. "We should move into your mom's house," he said one night over dinner. I nearly choked on my pasta. "What?" "Think about it, Kelly," he continued, his eyes lighting up. "It's a great house in a fantastic neighborhood. Sarah would have her own room, maybe even a playroom. Your mom needs care, and you'd be right there. Plus, we could rent out this apartment for some extra cash." I had to admit, it made sense. Mom's house was way nicer than our apartment, and the idea of not having to commute to take care of her was appealing. But still, it felt weird. "I don't know, John," I hesitated. "It's Mom's house. We can't just barge in." "Ask her," he insisted. "I bet she'd love the company. It's better than a nursing home, right?" He had a point there. Mom had made it crystal clear she didn't want to end up in a glorified prison for old people, as she called it. Maybe this could work. The next day, I broached the subject with Mom. To my surprise, her face lit up at the idea. "Oh, Kelly," she said, her voice weak but excited. "I'd love that. This old house needs some life in it again." And just like that, it was decided. We were moving into Mom's house. As I started packing up our apartment, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was the beginning of something big. I just didn't know if it was something good or bad. John was over the moon about the move. He kept talking about the garden he'd plant, the man cave he'd set up in the basement. Even Sarah seemed excited about having a bigger room. The move to Mom's house brought a whole new set of challenges. I quickly realized that taking care of a stroke patient was a full-time job, one I wasn't equipped to handle alone. After a week of sleepless nights and stress-filled days, I hired a nurse to help out during the day. Nurse Jenny was a godsend. She came in every morning at 8 and stayed until 6, taking care of Mom's basic needs. But evenings and nights were all on me. I'd come home from work exhausted, only to start my second shift as Mom's caretaker. The stroke had affected her speech, leaving her frustrated and often silent. I'd change her diaper, giving her as much dignity as I could in the process. Then came the sponge bath, the massage to keep her muscles from atrophying, the meds, and finally dinner. It was grueling work, both physically and emotionally. Seeing my vibrant, independent mother reduced to this state broke my heart every day. But I did it because I loved her, because she'd have done the same for me. What I didn't expect was Sarah's reaction to her grandmother's condition. At 11, I thought she'd be old enough to understand, to help even. Boy, was I wrong. One evening, as I was heading to Mom's room, I saw Sarah dart past, her hand clamped firmly over her nose. "Sarah," I called out, "where are you going? Don't you want to say hi to Grandma?" She shook her head violently. "No way, it smells gross in there." I was shocked. "Sarah, that's not a nice thing to say. Grandma needs our help and support right now." "I don't care," she spat back. "She's disgusting. I'm not going near her." Before I could respond, she stormed off to her room, slamming the door behind her. I stood there, stunned and hurt. Where had my sweet little girl gone? I turned to John for support, but found none. "Not my problem," he'd say whenever I asked for help with Mom. "I didn't sign up for this." It stung, but I couldn't entirely blame him. He hadn't signed up for this. None of us had. Still, I couldn't help but feel resentful as I watched him play video games with Sarah or take her out for ice cream while I was elbow deep in adult diapers and medication schedules. The one silver lining was seeing how close John and Sarah had become. They'd always had a good relationship, but now it seemed stronger than ever. I'd hear them laughing together in the living room or see them huddled over Sarah's homework at the kitchen table. It warmed my heart, even as it made me feel more isolated. 2 years flew by in a blur of bedpans, medications, and stolen moments of sleep. Mom's condition had stabilized, but she still needed constant care. I was exhausted, but I'd found a rhythm. Then one ordinary Tuesday, everything fell apart. The phone rang while I was changing Mom's sheets. It was Mrs. Peterson, our old neighbor from the apartment complex. "Kelly, dear," she said, her voice dripping with concern. "I thought you should know. I've been seeing John around quite a bit, with company, young women, different ones, always very pretty." I thanked her and hung up, my mind reeling. That night I confronted John. "Oh, those are just potential tenants," he said smoothly. "I'm showing them the apartment." I wanted to believe him. I really did. But doubt had taken root, and it grew like a weed. A week later, I found the lipstick stain. It was on the collar of his white shirt, a perfect crimson kiss. My hand shook as I held it up to the light, trying to convince myself it was just a pen mark or a food stain. But I knew better. I waited until his next business trip to make my move. With trembling hands, I unlocked the door to our old apartment. The sounds coming from the bedroom confirmed my worst fears before I even opened the door. There was John in our bed with a woman I'd never seen before. They scrambled to cover themselves, but the damage was done. "Kelly!" John exclaimed, not even having the decency to look ashamed. "What are you doing here?" I couldn't speak. I just stood there, staring at the scene before me, feeling my world crumble around me. "Look," John said, his voice cold. "I'm sorry you had to find out this way, but let's be honest, Kelly, I'm bored. You're always busy with your mother. This is exciting." His words cut deeper than any knife. Without a word, I turned and left, my mind already racing toward what I needed to do next. The divorce proceedings were ugly. John fought me every step of the way, but in the end, we stood before a judge, dividing up our life together like it was nothing more than assets on a balance sheet. Then came the hardest part, custody of Sarah. At 12, she was old enough to have a say, and her choice broke my heart. "I want to live with Dad," she declared, her voice steady. "I don't want to be around Grandma anymore. It's gross and depressing, and Mom's always trying to make me help." The judge nodded sympathetically. He took into account John's higher income, the stability he could provide, and Sarah's clear preference. In the end, John was awarded primary custody. I was devastated, but I tried to focus on what was best for Sarah. John could give her opportunities I couldn't: private school, dance lessons, summer camps. We agreed on weekends and holidays for me, a schedule that looked so neat and tidy on paper, but felt like a gaping wound in my heart. As I watched Sarah pack up her things, chatting excitedly about her new room at Dad's new place, I felt like I was losing everything. My marriage was over, my daughter was leaving, and I was left with a house that felt more like a hospital than a home. The first few months after the divorce were tough, but I clung to my weekends with Sarah like a lifeline. We'd go to the movies, have ice cream in the park, or just hang out at home. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. Then, slowly, things began to change. Sarah started canceling plans. "I have a sleepover," she'd say, or "Dad's taking me to a concert." I tried to be understanding, to be the cool mom who didn't make a fuss, but each cancellation felt like a knife twisting in my gut. Soon, the cancellations became more frequent. Weeks would go by without a visit. My calls went straight to voicemail. Text messages were met with one-word responses, if I got any response at all. One Sunday, after yet another canceled visit, I decided to call Sarah directly. The phone rang once, twice, then went to voicemail. I tried again. This time, a robotic voice informed me that the number I was trying to reach had blocked my calls. My hand shook as I dialed John's number. "What do you want, Kelly?" His voice was cold, annoyed. "John, I can't reach Sarah. She's blocked my number. What's going on?" There was a long pause, then, "Look, Kelly, Sarah doesn't want to talk to you right now. You need to respect that." "Respect that? She's my daughter." "She's also a person with her own feelings," John shot back. "And right now, she doesn't want to be around all that negativity at your place. I mean, the sickness, the sadness. Sarah needs stability. She needs a normal family. Sarah sees Lisa as a mother figure now. She has a normal family life here. 2 parents, no sick relatives, no drama. Why can't you just let her be happy?" I couldn't speak. Tears were streaming down my face, and I was glad John couldn't see me. "Look," he continued, his voice softening slightly, "I know this is hard, but if Sarah doesn't want to see you right now, you need to respect that. Don't force it. It'll only push her away more." I wanted to scream, to argue, to demand my rights as a mother, but a small, rational part of my brain whispered that he might be right. If I pushed too hard, I might lose Sarah forever. I sank to the floor, phone clutched to my chest, and sobbed. My little girl, my Sarah, didn't want me anymore. Someone else was being her mother, kissing her goodnight, helping with homework, sharing all the moments I was missing. Mom found me there hours later, still on the floor. She'd managed to shuffle over with her walker, her face creased with concern. "Kelly," she said, her voice stronger than it had been in months. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" I looked up at her, this woman who'd been my rock for so long, who I'd been taking care of for years. In that moment, our roles reversed again. I was the child, seeking comfort from my mother. "Oh, Mom," I cried, reaching for her hand. "I've lost her. I've lost my baby girl." Mom squeezed my hand, her touch still weak but full of love. "No, Kelly, you haven't lost her. She's just lost right now. She'll find her way back to you. You'll see." 14 years. It's amazing how time can fly by and drag on simultaneously. Mom's condition improved slightly over the years. She regained some mobility and speech, but caring for her remained a full-time job. When she passed away peacefully in her sleep, I felt a mixture of grief and, shamefully, relief. Suddenly, I found myself alone in this big, empty house. The silence was deafening. No more beeping medical equipment. No more schedules of medications and therapy sessions. Just me, rattling around in rooms full of memories. Then, out of the blue, my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but the voice, I'd know it anywhere, even after all these years. "Mom, it's Sarah. I was hoping we could meet, to talk." We arranged to meet at a cafe downtown. As I waited, my hand shook around my coffee cup. I spotted a young woman entering, and it took me a moment to realize it was Sarah. Gone was the gangly preteen I remembered. In her place stood a poised, beautiful young woman. "Hi, Mom," she said, sliding into the seat across from me. We made awkward small talk at first. She filled me in on her life, her job in marketing, her hobbies, her friends. I listened, soaking in every detail, every expression, every flicker of her eyes. I didn't want to scare her off by being too emotional. Then she dropped the bombshell. "I'm getting married," she said, pulling an envelope from her purse. Here's an invitation." My heart swelled with joy and a tinge of sadness. My little girl getting married. And I'd missed so much. "Oh, Sarah, that's wonderful news. I'm so happy for you. Listen, if you need any help with the expenses—" She cut me off abruptly. "Actually, Mom, that's kind of why I wanted to meet. I was hoping to talk about Grandma's inheritance, the house, her savings. I want them." I felt like I'd been slapped. "Excuse me?" "Look, Mom," she said, leaning forward. "That house is in a great area. It's worth a fortune. After the wedding, Jake and I want to live there, start our family there." Anger bubbled up inside me. "Sarah, you haven't set foot in that house in over a decade. You said it disgusted you. You called it a tomb." She waved her hand dismissively. "I was a kid then. I've grown up. Times have changed. And let's face it, I'm Grandma's only grandchild. She would have wanted me to have it." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Wanted you to have it? Sarah, you didn't even come to her funeral. You didn't call, didn't write, for years." "That's ancient history," she snapped. "The point is, that house should be mine. I deserve a comfortable life." "Deserve?" I was practically shaking with rage now. "You didn't lift a finger to help when Grandma was sick. I gave up my life to care for her, and now you think you deserve her house?" Sarah's face hardened. "Fine. If that's how you want to play it, I'll sue. I'll get what's rightfully mine." She stood up abruptly, snatching the wedding invitation from the table. "You know what? Forget it. You're not invited to the wedding. I don't need your negativity there, and I don't need your permission to take what's mine." As she stormed out of the cafe, I sat there stunned. The daughter I'd loved, missed, and longed for all these years was gone. In her place was the stranger, cold and greedy. The days following that disastrous cafe meeting passed in a haze. I alternated between rage, grief, and a numbing emptiness. But as the dust settled, I realized something surprising. I felt relieved. The weight of hoping for reconciliation, of longing for a relationship with Sarah, had lifted. In its place was a strange sort of peace. I didn't attend Sarah's wedding. I didn't send a gift or a card. Instead, I spent that day volunteering at a local animal shelter, finding comfort in the unconditional love of abandoned pets who needed care. It felt fitting somehow. Curiosity got the better of me a few days later, and I found myself scrolling through Sarah's social media. There she was, radiant in white, smiling up at her new husband. For a moment, my heart clenched with the pain of what might have been. But then I saw it. A long, rambling post about her cruel mother who refused to attend her wedding, who withheld her rightful inheritance out of spite. I read it twice, marveling at the sheer audacity of her lies. Part of me wanted to comment, to set the record straight. But what would be the point? The people who mattered, the family who had seen me care for Mom all those years, knew the truth. As for everyone else, well, their opinions based on a stranger's social media post were hardly my concern. A week later, my cousin Jeannie called. "Kelly, I thought you should know," she said, her voice a mix of anger and concern. "Sarah's been talking about suing you for your mom's estate." I sighed, unsurprised. "Let her try." "That's just it," Jeannie continued. "Apparently she talked to a lawyer. He told her she doesn't have a leg to stand on. Your mom left everything to you. Clear as day." I couldn't help but chuckle. Of course Mom had taken care of that. She'd always been the practical one. "Thanks for letting me know, Jeannie," I said. "But honestly, I don't care what Sarah does anymore. She's made her choices." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then Jeannie said softly, "I'm proud of you, Kelly. After everything you've been through, you deserve some peace." After we hung up, I looked around the house. Mom's house, now my house. Every corner held memories, some painful, some beautiful. But for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe here. I walked to the window, looking out at the garden Mom had loved so much. It had gotten a bit overgrown in recent years, but I could see its potential. Maybe it was time to bring some life back to it. As I stood there planning my next trip to the garden center, I realized something. The chapter of my life revolving around Sarah, the hope, the pain, the longing, was finally closing. But that didn't mean my story was over. Far from it. The garden was in full bloom when the call came. I'd spent the past few months throwing myself into its restoration, finding solace in the simple act of nurturing life. The roses Mom had loved so much were just starting to open, their scent filling the air. As I pruned the bushes, my phone buzzed in my pocket. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me press the green button. "Hello?" "Mom," Sarah's voice, thick with tears. "Mom, I need your help." I froze, pruning shears still in hand. Sarah, what's wrong? I'm pregnant, she sobbed. And we're struggling, Mom. I need money. You have to help me. You can't leave your grandchild without anything. I listened silently as she rambled on, her words becoming more frantic, more accusatory. You abandoned me, Mom. You never tried to contact me, never fought for me. And now you're going to abandon your grandchild, too? Something inside me snapped, not with anger, but with a calm, unshakable resolve. Sarah, I said, my voice steady, that's enough. She fell silent, probably shocked that I'd interrupted her tirade. I never abandoned you, I continued. I sent child support every month without fail. I called, I texted, I emailed. You blocked my number. You chose your stepmother. You made your decisions, and I respected them, even when they broke my heart. But Mom... No, Sarah, I'm not finished. You're an adult now, about to be a parent yourself. It's time you took responsibility for your choices and your life. I'm not your bank, I'm not your safety net, and I'm not going to be manipulated by lies and guilt trips. I could hear her breathing heavily on the other end of the line. If you need help, go to your father and stepmother, I said. They're your real family, remember? The ones you chose. I've made my peace with that. Now you need to make peace with the consequences of your choices. You can't do this, Sarah cried. I'm your daughter. Yes, you are, I said, my voice softening slightly. And I'll always love the little girl you were, but I don't know the woman you've become, and I don't think I want to. I took a deep breath. Goodbye, Sarah. I wish you and your child well, but please don't contact me again. I ended the call before she could respond, my hand shaking slightly as I lowered the phone. For a moment, I stood there in the garden, surrounded by the blooming life I'd nurtured, feeling the weight of what had just happened. Then, slowly, I felt it lift. The last ties binding me to a painful past had been cut, the last what-ifs laid to rest. I looked around at the garden, at the house beyond. This was my life now, not defined by loss or regret, but by the choices I made going forward. I picked up my pruning shears and turned back to the rosebush. There was still work to be done. Still beauty to cultivate, and for the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt truly, completely free.